Okay, so in this tutorial we'll be having a look at the EQ8, so it's basically like any other equalizer, it's just Ableton's version of it. And I'll be using my remix of Above and Beyond's Counting Down the Days as an example for this. So just be careful. I think most of you know what an equalizer does. It allows you to manipulate frequencies. So say you don't have enough lows on laptop speakers, which often is a problem, you can boost them a bit so you hear them more. And you need to be careful because if you're working with, for example, a master track like this one, if you boost anything, you'll probably get a clipping signal. So I've put a limiter on my master, which basically means even if this channel is, here is going over like this, the end result won't be clipping. And I usually work like that. So I'm just going to go back, tab to arrangement mode. Let's just dive right in. So click here for the browser and go to Audio Effects, EQ8 and drag that in. And this is the equalizer. And the first thing that you'll probably see is here you've got this nice big display. And you can turn the effect on and off like this. And you'll see immediately, you won't see anything like this when it's off, but if you turn it on, you'll start seeing the audio being represented here. And you can also turn this on just by clicking this arrow. And you can just drag this here to match your needs. I'm just using the default version of the equalizer. If you press this, you've got some presets in here, but I'm just going to show you the default mode. So you can see here at the beginning of the track, we've got a kick, and you can kind of see it thumping here. So you can kind of see what's going on there. And what this is basically showing, guys, so this graphical visualization of the audio, how it works, is you've got on your left side, basically got decibel. So that's basically volume. And here you've got the volume of the track, but that's not what this is representing, these numbers here, 12, 6, 0, minus 6, and 12. It's actually representing the amount that you're boosting something. I'll explain these points later on, but you can see it's basically how much. And on the bottom here, you've got your frequency, which is measured in hertz. And basically this goes from 30 hertz, more or less, to about 20,000 hertz, which is basically the range of human hearing. You can't really hear anything below 30 hertz. You can feel it though, if it's powerful enough. And you can't really hear anything above 20,000 hertz. Dogs can, but we humans can't. So unless dogs start working on Ableton, I think they're going to keep it like this. So we've got that, and the frequency, basically how it works is with hertz, you start with lows here. You can see the thump of the kick is here. If I boost this, then you've got your mids. So these are middle frequencies, and then you've got your high frequencies here. Okay. And what you've got here, I usually work like this, but in this mode you can do some more precise things. So for example, the mouse here, if you're hovering over and looking at this, see the first value is basically the hertz, so it's telling you the exact amount of hertz. The second value is basically telling you the note, so you can see A sharp, B, etc. And something interesting to know is if you're on 100 hertz, for example, the note is G1, and every octave you're going is actually doubling the frequency. So if you go to 200 hertz, it's G2. If you go to 400 hertz, it is G3, and so on and so forth. The last one is basically how many decibels you're boosting. So if you do this, you can see we're at about 10 decibels here. Now we're at 5, 8, etc. And now we're back at 0. And the Q is also represented here, which I'll explain later. So let's just close this for now. And you can see we've got various points to manipulate the audio, and you can turn them on and off. Here you can see 1 to 8. And let's just turn them all off except for 1 at the moment. And you can see already like they seem to be doing different things, right? So this one here was already like this, and they seem to be doing different things. But you can change the mode with this drop-down menu here. So I'll be explaining all of those, but the first thing that's important to know is you can just move them around like this. Move the points around just with your mouse and clicking on them. But if you want to do something more precise, you can use these knobs here as well. And something good to know is, for example, you can click on them and type like 500, and that will give you an exact value, or you can just click on them and press delete to reset their original values. So I'm just going to show you a quick example of what it sounds like here if we're moving something about. Okay, so you can kind of see this orange line is indicating what the audio is actually doing. So it's basically boosting these frequencies here. Or you can reduce them. Okay, and something interesting also is, I told you before, you can see the kick, and you can really see something's going on in your mix. So just before the drop, you'll see all the lows get cut, and then as the kick comes in, the bass here starts booming. So okay, and let's just start looking at the different modes. So the first two we've got are basically called high-pass filters, and what they do, you can kind of tell by the name. It lets the high frequencies pass and it cuts down the lows, as you can see here. So everything below this will be cut out, and it sounds like this. Okay, you've got two modes. Basically, the 4 times means it's much more harsh. And you've also got this Q here, which can make it even more harsh, which basically, it sounds like this. If you've got, this is without the Q. And with Q. Or really exaggerated. Okay. And let's just keep that there. And then you've got a different, the 4 times basically indicates how many decibels, like how many, like the amount of decibels that are getting reduced per octave. So you can already tell like this is it's being reduced less by frequency. So it's got a smoother sound if you listen. You can tell it's got a more smooth character. So that's low-pass filters. Now we've got something called low-pass shelf. And what this does is basically set any frequency. So let's do like 500. And basically what it does is it lets you boost or reduce any volume below that frequency. As it says, low-pass, low shelf. So, okay, and basically the Q just again says how smooth that effect will be. Okay, so that's low pass. They've got our peak, which we've seen before. It basically allows you to select a frequency, say 1000 Hertz, and boost it or reduce it. And also another thing that you should notice is the Q says again how harsh or like how subtle or pronounced it is. So basically now we're affecting 1000 kilohertz, and now it's basically just 1000. So, and you can tell it's really got like a tinny kind of sound because it's so thin. And if we make it a bit wider, it will be affecting more frequencies around it. Okay, so that's peak, and we've got something similar here. The peak is also useful to find like problems with the audio that we don't like. So say for example we don't like the punch of the track. You can already tell that's where the thump, the punch is. From the kick. And we can use the next one, which is basically a band reject, which basically means it cuts out all frequencies at a determined value. So we've got 100 now. So, and you can tell the punch is almost gone. And you can say how much of that frequency, like how many frequencies around that get cut away to with the Q. So okay, so that's band reject, and now we've got something similar. It's a high shelf. It does exactly what the low shelf does, but just with high frequencies. So if we set it here, so it's basically exactly what the low shelf does, just affecting the high frequencies instead of the lows. Then we've got two more filters. These are low pass filters, and as you can tell, it lets low frequencies pass and it cuts out all of these high frequencies, and it sounds like this. And you've got a more pronounced version, a harsher version, which just like before the 4 times, which is just more, it's just more harsh, you can see. So you can tell that's more pronounced, and you can also use the cues for these filters too. So you can understand a bit how that works. Then we can set a peak here, and I'll be explaining a bit more of these things. So I think I've already mentioned, you can press this and see what, this is basically the info box, and I'll be explaining these last buttons here, what they do. So I think I've already explained this one. It basically hides the graphical visualization. Then this is quite useful. It's called audition mode, and basically what it allows you to do is when you're changing a point, it lets you basically only hear the frequencies of that point. So you can tell it's not letting it kind of, so you see when you select it, it's basically cutting away all the highs when you listen to it. And especially when using the band reject, it's very useful to find problems with the audio. Because you have less stuff coming into your ears, so you can concentrate really on what you're trying to listen for. So that's audition mode. We can turn that off. And then you've got different modes. So the default mode, which I almost always use, is stereo. And it basically affects all of the frequencies on basically no matter how wide they are, or the panning, if they're more left or right. But if you click this, you can select left or right mode. And this basically lets you, so now we've got left selected, for example, and we can say, let's just cut everything, below 1000. And you can hear, now the left side won't have any of the, it basically won't have any bass in, because we've cut it out, just the left side. And you can switch left and right here. Then you've got the mid or side mode, and basically what this allows you to do is, if we just select, I don't know, a band reject, and we've got mid selected, just so you know, the thump of the kick is usually in the middle of the mix. So say we want to just get rid of the thump of the kick, but maybe we've got something going on the wider part of the mix that we don't want to get rid of, then we can just use this and affect the middle of the mix and not the highs, just by activating this. So now we've got the middle, and we already know the thump is at about 100 Hertz. So we can do that. And let's just set it back to stereo. And I'm going to put a peak again for this. And basically what this does is it kind of emulates a more analog EQ. So you can kind of see here, if I reset it, the higher you go, if you've got it on, it will just make it a bit thinner. So you can kind of do the same thing with the Q. So I just leave it on, and if I need to change anything, I just use the Q. Then you've got scale. So if you just boost it, so for example, 3 decibels, that's just 3 at the moment, but the scale will basically increase how much that is. So you can't really tell here, so I'm just going to increase it by, let's do 9, which is a lot, and reduce the scale to 100. Or you can even reduce it. So basically, you could just make another one by Control-D and duplicating it, and that will boost it even further. But if you just want to use this one and have more, get more value out of what you're doing, you can just use the scale. If you can see, if you set it to 100, it basically follows the point. You see the line goes through the point. And if you increase the scale, it goes above the point, or if you reduce it, goes below. So that's that. And then the last one, finally, is the gain, which basically is the output that goes out. So before I said, for example, about the limiter, and if we do this, for example, and go on the bass, you'll see this will start to clip. So with it off, it's just right, and if you do this, it's clipping. And instead of reducing the volume here by just hitting tab and going here, so you can see it needs about 8.7. You can just make the gain go to let's just do -9. And you can see it basically controls how much volume, just to plus or minus 12 decibels. It's controlling the volume that it's sending out. So I usually, instead of, when I'm working, instead of like changing the volume here on the mixer, which I can automate, I'll use the volume here, or other effects have this gain volume too. So that's quite useful. And I think that's all of it. If you've got a preset that you like and you want to save it, so say for example you just want to have something that basically cuts everything above below 500 hertz. So you've got a low pass that cuts below 500 hertz. You can click this and save it. So you can do like 500 hertz cut. I won't save it because I don't really want it. So I'll just press escape. And you can also use this to switch through presets. So you can just do like this, double click it, and it will automatically load it. So that's about, I think I've covered everything that's in the equalizer. If you have any questions, just drop a comment below. And if you want me to do any other tutorials on something specific, just ask me and I'll do it as soon as possible. Hope you enjoyed.